Good morning, Heaven Bound family, and all that might be watching. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word on this Friday, the 5th of March. In our last lesson on chapter 16, in verse 19, it says, "And the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell." Now, the city here divided into three parts, most of us agree, is Jerusalem. And great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Now, who is Babylon? Well, let me take you back to chapter 11, verse 8, I believe it is. In chapter 11, verse 8, it said, "And their dead bodies," talking about the two witnesses, "shall lie in the streets of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified." Now then, if we just read that the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, if we stop right there, we could easily believe that the two witnesses were lying in the streets of Sodom or in Egypt. However, notice the last phrase of the verse clarifies where this is at, where also our Lord was crucified. Well, we know Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem. So what John is doing here is he is symbolically speaking of the wickedness of the city of Jerusalem. It's like the wickedness of Sodom in their homosexuality and of Egypt in their cruelty towards the children of Israel who was coming out of Egypt there. Now, with that in mind, the fact that John uses Sodom and Gomorrah, or Sodom and Egypt, as a symbolic of Jerusalem, then is it not possible that when he speaks of Babylon, he is speaking of another city that other than the old ancient city of Babylon? And when we consider, if you go to any encyclopedia, or if you go to Google and you ask, are there any mountains around Babylon? And it will say Rome, the city of Rome, is known for the fact it was set on 7 hills. Now, look at chapter 18 just for a moment. And verse 21 says, "And a mighty angel took a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." And in verse 24, I'm sorry, just a moment. Okay, let me back up. Let me back up to chapter 17. We'll look at that one a little bit later. But here in chapter 17, in verse 5, it said, "And upon her forehead were written, Mystery Babylon." In other words, Babylon is a mystery. What is the mystery about Babylon? Well, notice in verse 7, "And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carried her, which had the 7 heads and 10 horns." Now then, all of us who make any attempt at all in explaining the book of Daniel and comparing it with the book of Revelations recognize the fact that the 7 heads and the 10 horns represents Rome. It represents the Antichrist and his 10 federated kingdoms. Now then, look at chapter 17, verse 9. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now then, Rome is known for the fact that it is built on 7 mountains. There are no mountains around ancient Babylon. So if the mystery of Babylon is that she sits on 7 mountains, when you consider the fact that the Antichrist is coming out of the old Roman Empire, then why would you think that ancient Babylon is the Babylon that Jesus or that John is talking about here? Let's back up and walk through, and let me give you some reasons why I believe that the city Babylon mentioned here is not the ancient Babylon. And there are a number of reasons. Reason number one, which to me is so plain. If John is talking about ancient Babylon here, then we don't have to worry about Jesus coming today, tomorrow, or the day after. You see, ancient Babylon today is in ruin. For this great city that they're talking about here to be ancient Babylon, then Jesus isn't going to come back until there is time enough for Babylon to be rebuilt. Saddam Hussein wanted to rebuild Babylon, but of course he was taken out by our forces, and the city of Babylon is still in ruin today. So for Babylon to be the ancient Babylon, then it's going to take time for them to build Babylon and for it to have the influence around the world that this Babylon has. Now, on the other hand, if the word Babylon here is spiritual, if it's symbolic, if it's speaking of Rome, then Rome is very much in existence today. The Vatican can be the false prophet riding up on the Antichrist, which reigns, or which comes out of the ancient Roman Empire. And therefore, Jesus could come today or tomorrow or anytime soon to rapture out the church. And then total devastation takes place as a result of so many having been taken out, and along with the spirit and the devastation that will take place when only evil reigns on the earth. So I would like to I would like to present to you reasons why I believe that Babylon is not the ancient Babylon, as many commentators. Matter of fact, I haven't read a commentator one that believes that Babylon is Rome, in spite of the fact that there's so many reasons why it would be. Let's look at just look at what John has to say about Babylon. If we look in chapter 14, verse 8, it said, "And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." Now, the fornication here could be 2 types of fornication. It could be sensuous fornication, but it can also be spiritual fornication. Now then, the ancient Babylon had little influence on the whole world. They had a lot of influence on the Middle East, but their power only reached from Egypt over to covering Iraq and Iran and the Middle East there. Certainly it didn't rule the kings of the earth and cause them to commit fornication, either one, as far as all the nations of the earth is concerned. And look at chapter 2, or not chapter 2, but number 2. There we had our first introduction to Babylon. there in 14:8. Now then, in 16, verse 19, it says, and the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Now, the city that is divided into three parts would be Jerusalem here, and then the cities that fell would be the great cities such as Paris, Rome, London, etc., because of the great earthquake, which was greater far than any earthquake, John says, that's ever been. Now then, notice this. And great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. All you've got to do is study history about the power that the Church of Rome ruled over the kings of the earth, and the numerous, the thousands, if not millions, of saints that was destroyed, was killed, martyred by the Vatican during the Dark Ages and so forth. Let's look at verse 2 of chapter 17. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now then, during the Dark Ages and even today, the Catholic Church teaches that Mary is to be worshipped, the saints are to be worshipped, and brought in many false doctrines that teaches contrary to what the Bible teaches. And so today, many good Catholics, good people, nonetheless, are worshiping Mary and worshiping saints and so forth. And again, an influence that the ancient city of Babylon did not have as far as all the nations of the earth. Look at verse 4. So he carried, this is chapter 17, verse 4. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit up on a scarlet-colored beast. Now the woman here would be the church, the false prophet, riding upon the Antichrist. And one commentator said, picture this, a woman riding a horse. The horse is carrying the woman, but the woman has the reins and guides the horse in the direction he wants it or she wants it to go. Remember, it is the false prophet who had the idol built that everybody had to bow down and worship. It was the false prophet who said that if nobody could eat or buy, nobody could buy or sell unless they worshiped the beast and took the mark of the beast. And it says here, so he carried me away in a spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. Well, we all agree that the beast is Rome. It's the Antichrist, which comes out of the old Roman Empire, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Who are the 7 heads and the 10 horns? Well, the 10 horns we find there, we read just a moment ago, the 7 heads is 7 mountains, and the 10 horns are 10 kings who don't yet have their power. Look at verse 4 of chapter 17. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colored and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Again, all we've got to do is study to know how vain the Church of Rome is, and how rich the Church of Rome is, and how decked out the Church of Rome is in all of its vestures and so forth. Verse 5 says, and upon her forehead there is written Mystery Babylon. Now, what is the mystery of Babylon if it is the ancient Babylon? It's a mystery because it's not the ancient Babylon, but the word Babylon is used because going all the way back to Genesis 10, when Nimrod established the city of Babylon there, it was in Babylon there that they built the tower to heavens that God came down and destroyed, confusing their language. And all throughout ancient history, Old Testament history, Babylon grew into a major city. And of course, Humarati was probably the greatest king to rule there, set up the letters of the code, Himmerati code, and so forth. We're most familiar with it when Nebuchadnezzar reigned, and he conquered Jerusalem and destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. But by the time of John's writing, Babylon had been destroyed and was nothing but rubble for the past 500 years. Now, Jerusalem was destroyed in 586 BC because of her sins, but 70 years later, as God promised, it was rebuilt by Nehemiah. And 536 through 516, the temple was built, and then 455 or 445, Nehemiah came down and built the walls of the city, and it was rebuilt. But Babylon, now for 2,500 years, has never been rebuilt. And for it to be rebuilt and to have the influence over the world that this city has would mean that the Antichrist isn't coming for many years yet, and therefore the rapture of the church is probably not going to be for many years. But he says here in verse 7, and the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of a bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwelt on the earth shall wonder, whose names was not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Speaking about the Antichrist. Now notice verse 9. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Rome is known as the city that sitteth upon 7 mountains. Babylon is not. Look at verse 12 of chapter 17, and it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. This is the 10 federated kingdoms of Europe that come out of the old Roman Empire. And so since the 10 kings are the federated kingdoms of Rome, which all of us would agree with, then this woman is riding up on the beast. And the mystery Babylon is 7 heads. It is a city that sits on 7 mountains. And the 10 kings are the federated empires. If we go down to verse 15 of chapter 17, it says, and he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitude and nations and tongues. Ancient Babylon, as we said earlier, ruled over the Middle East, but certainly never reached out into all the world there and all the nations and people of the earth. And so when we look at what John has to say, all that he has to say there, I certainly don't consider myself smarter than these great commentators who, for some reason or another, try to make Babylon there the ancient city. But when we consider all that is involved, all that John has to say there about it, especially concerning the fact she sits on 7 hills, then we have to believe that Babylon here is Rome and not the ancient city of Babylon. We don't believe that the ancient city of Babylon is going to be rebuilt and have any semblance of power over the nations of the world. Not if Jesus is coming soon. Not if we're near to the beginning of the tribulation period, as all commentators believe we are. I've gone longer than I wanted to go. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word on this Friday. Go forth, have a wonderful Friday, have a blessed weekend, and worship the Lord every day, and then especially go out to His house and worship Him this coming Sunday. God bless you. Go forth, bless someone. It'll bless you. It'll bless them. It'll bless God. And God will bless you. Have a wonderful day.